green and ready to support. The summer weather forecast for launch was looking a little tricky tonight, but the weather has cleared up, so we're tracking a 90% chance of go for launch. Apart from that, the teams are currently tracking no issues with the vehicle or spacecraft. Now at this point in the countdown, we should see the strong back clamp arms that are just below the payload fairing opening up in a couple seconds. You can see those clamp arms opening up, and after they open up fully, you'll see the strong back recline away from the rocket, and once F9 takes off from the pad, it'll pull away from the rocket even more. So the strong back, also referred to as the TE or transporter erector, is that large structure that you see next to Falcon 9 and what we use to route electrical connections and propellants to the vehicle. Coming up next, at T-minus 3 minutes, we should hear that Stage 1 has completed liquid oxygen loading.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
So at T-minus 3 minutes, the Falcon 9
pogo.
First stage is fully loaded with RP1 and LOX, and we're awaiting completion of LOX load on the second stage in about 50 seconds from now. Those white clouds around the vehicle are actually vented chilled gas from above the LOX tank liquid surface that we vent overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. It's totally normal, and when it's being vented and comes into contact with the humid Florida air, it makes that white cloud that you're seeing. As you can see from all that soot on the bottom of
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
On the bottom of F9, the booster or the first stage of the rocket that you see on screen is flying for its 15th time today. We also just heard that call out for LOX load completion on the second stage, which means that Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. After liftoff and stage separation,
close down.
This booster is scheduled to land on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. And as many of you may already know, successfully recovering parts of the rocket allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access. Coming up next, we should hear a call out over the nets updating us that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the flight computers have taken over the launch countdown.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And there we just heard that call out that F9 is now in startup, and in a couple seconds we should hear from our launch director on the final go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
The launch director has given the final go to proceed for launch, so let's sit back and watch as Falcon 9 takes our 22 Starlink satellites into space.
30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine full power. And liftoff of Starlink. Go Falcon, go Starlink. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
At T plus 30 seconds, F9 has successfully lifted off from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral, Florida at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. The next major milestone coming up is max Q, which is when the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of external stress as it ascends through the Earth's atmosphere.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Just heard that Falcon 9 is supersonic, which means it is now traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
There you just heard that call from max Q, which again is when the rocket experiences the largest amount of external stress. We're now about 1 minute away from a series of key back-to-back events. There's MECO, or main engine cutoff, stage separation, SES-1, or second engine start 1, and then fairing separation. MECO, or main engine cutoff, is when all 9 of the Merlin engines on the first stage shut down. Stage separation is when the first and second stages separate from one another. SES-1, or second engine start 1, is where we light the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, and then it's followed by fairing separation, which is when the two fairing halves separate and fall away from the second stage. So let's keep an eye out for those events, as they're going to happen pretty quickly back to back.
Main engine cutoff. Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
So as you just saw and heard over the nets, we had successful MECO, stage separation, and SES-1. We're coming up on fairing separation from the second stage in just a few seconds. You can see two of the grid fins on the left-hand side of your screen. Those are deploying on stage 1.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Both of the fairing halves that supported today's mission are flying for the second time, and we'll be attempting to recover both fairing halves using our recovery vessel, Bob. So we'll have intermittent views of stage 1, but we do have a great view of stage 2. So currently the first stage is on its way back to Earth towards our drone ship, 8 shortfall of Gravitas, and that MVAC engine that's attached to the second stage is continuing its burn, which will last another few minutes.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
Nominal trajectory.
Designed and manufactured by SpaceX, Starlink is the world's largest satellite internet constellation. Starlink satellites operate in low Earth orbit, or LEO, which enables the delivery of high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe. Starlink is currently live in 62 countries and 78 markets around the world. As I mentioned earlier, today's Starlink mission marks SpaceX's 50th mission just this year and 249th mission overall. Coming up next in the mission is the entry burn on the first stage, which is the first of 2 burns it'll go through in preparation for landing.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
There's that call out for Stage 1 entry burn. The booster has reignited engines 1, 5, and 9 to help it slow down for atmospheric reentry.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And there you just saw and heard that call out that entry burn on the first stage has now completed.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
If you take a look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you can see that Stage 1 is continuing to slow down, whereas on the right-hand side, you can see that Stage 2 continues to increase speed.
Stage 1 transonic.
There's that call that the first stage is transonic, which means it's traveling near the speed of sound. Coming up in a few seconds will be the landing burn on Stage 1 before it touches down on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Expected loss of signal, Cape J6 and PPF.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
This Falcon 9 first stage has now successfully launched and landed for its 15th time. Now we're coming up on second engine cutoff in a couple of seconds.
MVAC shutdown.
And there you just heard, we had SECO 1, and now we are waiting for confirmation of good orbit.
Nominal orbit insertion.
There's that call out we were waiting for, confirmation of
Expected
good
loss
orbit.
of signal, Bermuda.
Today's landing marks our 210th overall landing of an orbital-class rocket, including Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy missions. And with confirmation of successful first stage landing and second engine cutoff, that wraps up our coverage for now. Be sure to check out our social media for confirmation of Starlink deployment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.